guys, and thank you for joining us today in our second Zoom chat and chill. Our guest speaker today is Maureen, and I'll let you introduce yourself, Maureen, and then we'll get down to it.
Great. Hi, I'm Maureen Carroll. I'm a Rutgers graduate. I graduated in 2011. That's where I earned my library degree. And I have been a school librarian just about ever since then. So for about 9 years, I've been a school librarian in New Jersey in Bergen County.
So just to, I don't know, when you were at Rutgers, did they have the two different tracks, or was it just the regular track okay. So you
Yes.
chose the media specialist track. Okay.
Exactly. Yes. Kind of early on, I figured, I'll pad my courses that way. And I was able to, I never, diverted from that track. I committed early on and stayed with it.
What made you choose school librarian versus public librarian?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot of overlap in the fields, both professions. There's no denying that. I liked the consistent access to students. I felt like maybe that path would provide me, a little bit more regular, dare I say, captive audience with the students, which I appreciated. I also value the idea of being able to teach children how to be safe online and how to kind of navigate information, because I know, I'm sure it's a skill many of us maybe weren't taught in school ourselves. And I can't sugarcoat it, can't beat the schedule.
It definitely is. I'm taking one class that's specifically tailored for school librarians. So I do notice the divide between a school librarian and a public librarian. So it is interesting because you do have a lot more access to the students than, versus I, who would only see them after school. And most of the stuff, while we do a lot of undercover educational stuff, is a lot more informal, and they just want to come and hang out somewhere outside of school. So
Yeah.
I do miss that deeper connection that you probably have with them, since you see them so much more frequently.
Yes. And, sometimes it feels like they have to be there or are not necessarily choosing to be there. But that's actually not the case with me, because I am on a flexible schedule, being in the upper grades. So, in a middle school, I teach, it's grades 5 through 8. We don't have a set library class in my school. We have a flexible schedule. So that the burden then is on me to collaborate with the teachers and pull in business that way. And, I open to kids, they have independent time. But I do feel like, public libraries, sometimes you all can order better books than I can. Sometimes you can be a little bit more lenient and have maybe some more creative programs than we can in a school. Sometimes we typically have to justify, certainly we have to justify everything under our curriculum, or
I was going to say your standards or something. The one class I'm taking, everything that's the hardest thing I'm having to deal with is applying what I do with standards, because in a public library setting, it's not like someone's going, what standards did you use at story time? And it's like, so it is funny that there's that. So I did find that really interesting. I guess I wasn't aware of what a school librarian entailed, because I didn't even think about you having to adhere to those standards as well.
Yeah, and I think some districts are a little more maybe lenient with like a lesson plan situation. I know I'm not really expected to do a lesson plan, but certainly my calendar is available, it's public. Any of my supervisors can review it at any time, and I'm always happy to have a chat with what's going on. I always say I'm like a doctor's office. I try to get myself booked out at least 2 weeks in advance. I really make a point to do that. Certainly it looks good. It makes me feel good, and then generates a little buzz about the library. Sorry, you're gonna have to wait 2 weeks. But but there is, as you're saying, Gladys, there is definitely sometimes a bit of a pressure to feel like you're maybe hitting some standards when you do eventually do a more formal lesson.
Yeah, that's definitely something I wasn't aware that you had to adhere. I mean, like you said, I guess it depends on the school district and how you work, but it wasn't even something that I'd considered before taking this class. It was really interesting to have to be like, what standards do these lessons, because I sort of knew a little bit from when I was student teaching and stuff, but it never occurred to me. I don't know. So it was interesting to learn that aspect of, librarianship in a school setting.
Yeah, and I'll just speak to the standards quickly. We're lucky, as librarians or potential school librarians, We can kind of finagle our way into all different standards. Certainly we have AASL standards, which I'm sure you all are very familiar with, the American Association of School Libraries. They have a wonderful set of standards, but certainly a modern school librarian could also get away with ISTE standards. So that would be more of a tech-based approach and how students are learning that way. I think we can even finagle next gen science standards with a lot of the STEM support that we do. So there's a lot of different places that we plug in. I find myself pulling from different ones, not to mention the student learning standards, like the literature requirements and being able to analyze informational text. So it's cool.
So as being a Rutgers alum, is there a class that really stood out for you, or which one was your favorite class, or one that you highly recommend taking if you're thinking of being a media specialist?
Hmm. I loved, certainly the exposure to children's literature, young adult literature. That was actually something that I hadn't dabbled in a while. So I was appreciative of those classes. But I think the ones I would recommend for any aspiring school librarians are the classes that maybe get you thinking about information a little bit. I know many of us, I'm sure, hopefully that class is still around, like human information behavior. Now that was a requirement.
Yeah, it's still required.
And it's still a
I'm in it
requirement.
right now.
There you go. That to me, that was really, that's the first time, right? That's the first time we started thinking about how folks use information. I had also taken a little bit later on social informatics, and I think that was a wonderful. That was kind of like an elective for me. That was a great class because again, it had us thinking about relationships related to information. And frankly, I felt like I was diversifying myself a little bit. Like if y'all can get into like any type of technology course or a production course, I think that will help build your skill set as schools schools and libraries look to hire for folks with a diverse skill set.
So now that you mentioned technology, how has COVID changed how you approach the students? How do they come is there a set time that they come to the library? I know you still do book talks because my boss Mary participated in one with you, but how do they access the library now that they can't go in physically?
Yes, so huge problem. Huge piece of the job is missing. We're doing the best we can. We've jumped on the train of virtual classrooms, like many teachers. So we've tried to, when I say we, I mean myself and my high school colleague, because we both have flexible schedules. So and frankly, I'm sure the elementary school folks are doing the same thing. But we really try to set literally a digital classroom. We give them a little choice board where students can access free reading resources, but I've made it a point to kind of keep it business as usual. I'm still reaching out to teachers to schedule appointments. We have ebooks now. We did not have them last year. So I luckily have a whole slew of appointments that I can book to demonstrate our ebook platform, because that is new for students, as well as just a few safe and good ways to find information, reading online, right? We don't want to be downloading PDFs, and that's a habit that our young people do all the time. So we want to make sure that they're ethically sourcing their reading. The other thing too, my district has been very blessed to be able to put together a strong team to support our teachers with technology. So I'm sure some teachers feel like they were left floundering, but in defense of my district, I think we really have done a good job providing training. And I know myself as a librarian was pulled into that back in March when we first closed. And really, I know they look to me as one of the go-to folks to train teachers and folks coming back from leave on all these new platforms. It's a big piece of our job, whether we like it or not.
Definitely technology. I mean, there's no denying it. There's no going back. It's become so integrated with everything we do. So it is, something that even going forward, I think we had talked about at my library, keeping like some Zoom stuff available, just because you reach such a wider audience. So it's definitely interesting. I don't know if I'm going to check the chat really quick to see if anyone has any questions, or hi to all those who joined us. I see some familiar faces. Do you have any anecdotes or any stories you want to tell us about? I mean, I'm sure there's got to be stories to tell.
Oh, the stories. Well, speaking though of just kind of our time going on now, I think any of you who are working in a public library might be feeling that Zoom fatigue is real. And I recently, polled my students. I have diehard library fans. I love it. I have students
You
that I
do,
rely
yeah.
on. You all know who those young people are, and they're not even showing up to some of the stuff that I would be hosting online, like these book talks. And you really have to think about the check, like their social emotional check-in. There's no denying that that's our responsibility as educators, and you all as certainly community members in a public library. We've got to check on our young people. I even surveyed them recently, and what's going on? Why can't you attend virtual library recess? And they're literally telling me, I have to walk the dog, I have to help my baby sister, I have to I'm too tired, I need a break. So even something that was so comforting to them, our school library has, it's been hard to connect to students that way.
Yeah, I guess because they do have, they have to be on such a much
Yeah.
more rigorous schedule than it would have been had they been in school. Because I know they don't usually get like the time they would have to walk between classes or to go to their locker. They no longer have that. So it does seem a little bit more stressful. But I think they get out earlier, right? Technically, the school day ends out.
So we had a bit of a change in plans. We were set to do a hybrid return right after Halloween on that November 2nd or so. And we got word that we need to actually keep the students remote for a little longer. So I don't know when we opened with them fully remote staff reporting. And I don't know when our hybrid return will be. However, I am very lucky that I do have a very supportive administration who is in conjunction with myself in the planning and our district nurse. We're prepared to open our school library back up to students, following different protocols. And I'm just so happy that my district's not afraid to do that. And I think that's important because, again, that school library is going to be their sense of normalcy. It's going to be the one normal thing they're going to see when they return. And, that makes me super proud.
And you have a great area. Your room is really nice. You have a lot of computers. You do. I mean, I know the budget isn't probably what you'd like it to be for buying books, and I'm sure you have the same problem we do getting materials back. But you have done the room that your library. I think is great. I think it's so welcoming. Every time I've stopped by, I always look around. I'm like in awe of all the signs and everything you've made. It's a really great space.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hey, for any future interviewers, any job you go to, do make sure you don't let them take you to the Board of Ed room and just sit in the Board of Ed room. You need to see the school library that you might be working in. Very, very important. Ask to see your working space. That's how I knew that I chose the right district.
I'm just going to butt in for a second. It looks like
Sure.
James would like to ask a question since he's got his hand raised. I think you can unmute yourself though.
Yes, I can. Sorry, I came in late, and I appreciated hearing what you had to say. I wonder a little bit about metrics. Before the pandemic, back in the ancient days when life was somewhat close to normal, if it's ever normal at school, what kinds of metrics did you use to sort of assess from year to year what you were doing and how you were achieving whatever objectives you might have set for yourself? And in the current situation, are there any metrics whatsoever that you are trying to apply to say, yes, we're handling the situation well, or, we could be doing better in one area or another, or, yeah, things are going great. We're really handling this bizarre circumstance well?
That's a really great question, James. A lot of the metrics that I have come up with were self-made because one of the challenges of working in a school library is that your boss is not a librarian. So they don't know sometimes what to ask, and that's to no fault of their own. I would use things like our circ stats, monthly stats, that type of thing, our visits. I always quantified how many students we had visiting during lunch recess, and we surveyed a lot. Now, certainly half of those metrics are gone right now. I am still measuring what I have at my fingertips. So I'm still counting, well, I'm counting ebook circs, certainly not physical circs. And, you know, it is still, I think, a little early to tell for those of you, again, who are interested in school librarianship. SGOs, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that phrase, SGO, student growth objective. That's what the state of New Jersey requires teachers to do to measure success. And depending on the district, you as a school librarian might also be required to submit an SGO, and it's a pretty formal document. It includes data, you have a data starting point, you kind of take the temperature again, and you're supposed to be demonstrating growth. They're moving to, I think, to a portfolio method. That's like the latest buzz I'm hearing while we're in this pandemic. So the metrics that I'll probably use if we do go to a portfolio method would be something like our program attendance, again, frequent student surveys where I literally ask them, how are we doing? Not every child takes that survey, but many of them do, and you know, they're often very honest, which is awesome. I survey teachers, you know, what do you need from me? What are you missing? And I try to do a little outreach and just document it. I hope that answered.
Yes, that helps. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Allie, do you want to talk about really quickly about the portfolio that you're working on now?
I'm actually not working on a portfolio now myself, but I'm just confirming that my district has at least started the switch over. So I've been on, I think I'm eventually getting tasked with helping make sure those are coming along, but just wanted to say that that's already in the progress. So I'm like, oh, I recognize something.
Yes, yes. And you know, this portfolio it's going to be dependent on the district. I think it makes perfect sense. A school librarian, especially one who's flexible like on a flexible schedule like myself, needs to be evaluated via portfolio. I mean, I have so much anecdotal stuff that I could put in that I can't count. I can't count it. Typically, you know, it's hard to quantify that type of thing. There's a huge reliance on quantification. That's a whole nother argument. But I'm excited for this potential shift to a portfolio. And it could be a teacher, my supervisor observing a lesson. That might be something that goes into the portfolio as a measure on how we're kind of doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was something that was super interesting, and I can see myself, I guess, pivoting. I have a background in arts management, so I had to study a lot on how to measure like the intrinsic impact and to get like the stories being told. That's not something you could put into a data set or try to figure out how to put it into some sort of quantifiable data when you go for grants and stuff. So it's good to hear that the portfolio might actually be something for me to start paying attention to right now.
Yes.
Maureen, I guess the biggest difference between a school librarian and a public librarian is you do work with a lot of different disciplines, much more so than I would. If you could speak to that a little. I know there's probably a lot of STEM. Well, I don't know if STEM would qualify, or I guess it would.
Yes. So I would also say, you know, good news again to any aspiring librarians. If you are interested in STEM, I think you could find your way into numerous different types of positions with that interest or background. You know, I like science, technology, engineering, and math, but maybe not enough to reinvent myself as a STEM educator. A lot of librarians take that on, they love it, and that works for them. Some are voluntold that now they're the STEM teacher. My district, we're lucky, we actually have a separate STEM department, and you know, myself and those educators collaborate often. But you have to be comfortable working with every discipline, which I think for me kind of answers the question as to why I didn't become a classroom teacher. I really enjoy so many different disciplines that the library was like the perfect place to really, I didn't have to commit to one of them. Not gonna lie, it's hard to support math sometimes. It's a little difficult sometimes.
That would
but
be
you know
the
what?
one that would do me in, would be math.
Yeah.
I'd be like, no, I can't.
The biggest avenue into math, though, for sure, is a tech tool. So, you know, when you want to highlight a nice tech tool for a math teacher to make their life a little easier, maybe a digital whiteboard or digital graphing paper, that could be a fun, you know, a fun, easy way to warm the hearts of a math educator.
I have another question here from James.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So My ambition is public libraries. And the library I'm working at now, I've always been very impressed on Friday afternoons after 3 o'clock, Saturday all day, Sunday pretty much all day. The library is packed with kids, and they're mostly junior high and high school kids sitting around tables with their friends. And yeah, they're gabbing, but they're also studying, and they're also gabbing about what they're studying. So our library clearly isn't a community where the kids care about school. And the library, the public library, is a center for them to do studying for a whole slew of reasons that can be speculated on. But I've never had the sense that the library, the public library, and the school library, or the school in general, coordinated very much. And I guess I'm asking from the point of view of personal experience, but is there any information in a larger sense, speaking sort of generally, to what extent public libraries and school libraries in particular, coordinate on stuff, whether it's summer reading or tutoring facilities? You know, this is an area where we know our students need more tutoring. So if you can find people to do tutoring in these areas and organize tutoring organizations at the class or clubs around these subject areas, we know that our students would be interested. That seems to me like a huge opportunity that the public schools and the public libraries and the local schools, both public and private, could coordinate to support that really important constituency of the community. And I just was wondering what your experience is, and if you're aware of sort of a general national or New Jersey-wide pattern.
Yes, I am. So I work in Hackensack, and Gladys is at that library. The library is called Johnson Public Library. Their librarian, the teen librarian there, actually won an award from NJLA all about our community, our partnership. It was the NJLA Amy Jo Partnership Award. So it was between my school and the public library. Specifically, what we had done was we were hosting book talks, just like it sounds, right? Carrie, the teen librarian, would come in and share the latest, greatest books. And we had done that for many years. The kids would visit the school at lunch. The teen librarian would come into me. The kids were there, our captive audience, and they would enjoy the presentation. But as I said, for many years, it just stopped. The teen librarian, Carrie, she had a great idea to start loaning. She would borrow books, interlibrary loan books to herself, and she would bring them literally on a cart, in a crate, to my school so that students can check out right after school. They'd be able to check out those book talked books. They were cool books that I didn't have. So that was just one way we partnered, and we were acknowledged by NJLA for that. I will say too, Ocean County Library System had developed an incredible support program, much like you were kind of alluding to, James, all about how can we get students help with tutoring, homework help. They had kind of made their own portal, frankly. It was a portal. And if anyone wants, I can get you the better information on that after. Maybe you could pass it along to the attendees. But absolutely, I think it's a standard expectation that a school librarian and your public librarian will work together for summer reading and for other clever community partnerships, for sure. It helps if you both get along nicely with each other.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up, I gather that that's the expectation. Is it the reality? I'm not aware, again, in my library, that there is that much coordination. I think not this summer, because obviously this summer was different, but right. Last summer, suddenly we discovered that there wasn't going to be a summer reading list for each of the grades. In the past, there were summer reading lists for each of the grades, and we created a special section. We pulled all of those books and dragged out of storage the extra copies of the ones that we knew year after year after year were going to be on the summer reading list. And we would put out this special section, and we were all gearing up to do this. And it turned out that they didn't have a reading list. They just said, read some books, and they didn't make recommendations of any sort whatsoever. And my impression was that there was no coordination on this at all. It was just sort of, at the last minute, we were like, where's the list? And, oh, well, there's not going to be one this year. So despite the fact that clearly the kids are very engaged in school and they spend a lot of time at the public library, I felt like that in a couple of these points, there could have been better communication between the school and the library. Is that unusual, or is the reality often not?
Well, I've worked in two different school districts, and both had a pretty solid contact. We had pretty solid contact with each other. I can definitely see, though, that if once it gets beyond the two librarians, supervisors get involved, principals get involved, the curriculum specialist gets involved. And sometimes those decisions about the summer reading list happen there. And then even we're told last, and we have to break the news to our teen librarian counterpart that, oh my gosh, all that work you did was for nothing, because now we've decided not to grade the summer assignment, so the books aren't required. That does happen. I think the solution to something like that, and this is even beyond us here, is we have to invite to the table those upper admin has to be involved in some of that decision-making process, so that type of, so folks' time is not wasted, and we develop better relationships. I think sometimes a smaller town can have stronger collaborative relationships, easy ways for students to get cards. It maybe is, when they're enrolled in school, they're enrolled with a library card. I mean, that could be incredible. I know we have some barriers with that type of thing. It's hard for our kids to be able to get a library card sometimes in my town, just for various reasons. But it is, in my experience, it has been a positive collaboration. But I would say too, whether you interview for a public librarian job or a school librarian job, that's a good question to ask, James, for sure. You want to ask, take the temperature of the collaboration level, and you can kind of help decide if that's going to be a fit for you or not. It's more fun when you definitely can work together and work together well.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, James.
Maureen, I have two questions from Debbie for
Sure.
you. It said, how did you know you wanted to do middle school? Like, did you specifically search out a middle school position, or was that just a job you happened to get? And also pre-pandemic, if you didn't have regular time with the kids, what were the expectations for you in terms of how much time you spent with them and what you taught them?
Great. So yes, I knew I only wanted to do middle school or high school. I did not want to be an elementary librarian. I still don't want to be an elementary librarian. It's just not for me. Bless everyone who is in a public library or in a school. Children's librarian is just, I don't think it's a fit for me. I love the independence, a little bit more independence at the older grades. So that was something that I was definitely pretty, lucky to have a choice in. I was very lucky to have that option presented, like the right fit came along. And I would say that if you feel similar, stay the course, you will find that school that fits what you need, because we don't want a grumpy elementary school librarian. Nobody wants that. As far as your other question, which was, Gladys, what was it?
It was about pre-pandemic. If you didn't have regular time with the kids, what were the expectations for you in terms of how much time you spent with them and what you taught them?
Yes. Again, can depend on your boss, right? Your non-librarian boss. Typically, your boss is either going to be an English supervisor, a STEM supervisor, some kind of combination. Could be the drama club supervisor, or your building principal. So depending on their personality, you would either be told what you're going to be doing, or ideally, and this is a question to ask in an interview, you develop to them your proposal for what you'd like to be doing. And I've been very blessed that all my administrators have always kind of let me do me. If they had a problem, they would tell me. So really, the only expectation, I suppose, is that I was busy. And how did I show that I was busy? By keeping that calendar publicly available, by tweeting and using Instagram to highlight things that we had been doing in class. I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I would get teachers to email and thank me in front of the principal. Hey, you got to do it, because they don't, that's the one day, right? The principal, when your library is jam packed with students, that's no one walks by on those days. They walk by on the one day the meeting that was just in your library closed out, and that's when the Board of Ed walks in and everyone's on lunch. There's nobody here, I'm closed, there's no kids. That's the day they visit. You've gotta be an advocate. I think that is the you gotta have that thick skin a little bit. In a public library, folks are, again, your boss is a librarian, your colleagues are librarians, you are around librarians, you're around like-minded people. In a school library, you're not. You are an island. Pre-pandemic, I was an island, and I'm still an island. You have to have that bone in you that lets you be a mouthpiece for yourself and for your program and for your students.
We have another hand raised from Whitney.
Thank you.
Your question, Whitney.
Hi, I'm sorry, I was so late, so maybe you already went over this, but I was wondering if you have any type of printouts or digital items like LibGuides or even just like guide documents that you produce for your students to use.
You know what? I don't. Nothing formal. All the schools I've worked in have never really been like LibGuide schools. It's just kind of, I don't know if it was slightly more independent teachers or what. That was just never something I really ever prepared for them. But certainly, Whitney, if you're looking, maybe I can help do a little snooping and we can find some. But I personally don't have any printouts that are formal like that to share, or even presentations. That's a great question though.
I feel like in Hackensack, I'm sorry, Whitney. I feel like in Hackensack, at least, it's not something, a lot of it is much more informal. Because even in the children's room, we don't have any like we have lists that you can look at, but nothing that we set up on the website or anything like that. So it is much more informal when it comes to that, because sometimes I feel like the parents' digital knowledge is so basic that you don't want to overwhelm them either.
Yes, and I think too, like the culture of the school that you're in, I can see, I'm just thinking back on interviews and just knowing other colleagues who do use, things like LibGuides often. And I thought, ooh, that's a shortage. Why aren't I doing LibGuides? And frankly, maybe I should. Maybe that's an area of weakness for my portfolio. I need to think about that. But the culture of the school too, and just like the vibe of your teachers, like, girl, why are you giving me this paper? Girl, why are you giving me this list? I don't want your list. That could be something that happens. It must have happened somewhere in my career that I'm like, I won't give you a list anymore, never mind. Try to, it's kind of, I guess it really depends on the school that you're in. Those are great questions, thank you.
I have another question.
Go for it.
How much time, especially when you were just getting started as a school librarian, how much time did you spend on lesson plans? I mean, I assume that, up until last year, you probably were able to repeat some of your lessons, obviously with some adaptations as you got different, had changes, but how much time did you spend at first?
Well, so I've always had a flexible position. Another reason why I took this job. I've always had a flexible position. So lesson planning was at my own pace. So I would say, it was less than a quarter of my time probably. Being in the flexible space, what I really focused on was policy changes, just what old policies I didn't like and that type of thing. Also a lot of physical space changes. And then I thought about it almost like, like why we decorate a storefront. I got to draw these people in. And then a lot of unsolicited tech tips. I was giving out candy to teachers. Like I really focused early on my connection with staff. I would say that was the number one thing that I did. That's like how I moved in really quickly. But I would think that an elementary librarian, someone who has a class, I think it's going to be heavy, very heavy in the beginning, depending on how fast you work, with your own planning. one beautiful thing usually about elementary school is kids are going to be on a cycle, right? So you're going to see, so-and-so Mondays and different kids every day of the week. So really you already have your 5 lessons done. When you've done it once, you have your 5 days of lessons, and it will probably repeat. So you really probably only need to be planning for a week's worth of, rather a lesson a week. So that's even different than a classroom teacher who needs that daily lesson. But yeah, lesson planning would be expected, and it would be, I would think, kind of heavy at the elementary level.
Thank you.
Well, thanks,
You're
Maureen. And thank you everyone who asked questions. We do have to wrap it up. If I will add your email that I have. Do you want us to tag the middle school as well too? So they could, or you
Sure.
just want to keep your personal?
No, I think it's good. I think it's good for folks to be able to see, what a modern school library looks like. So please, Gladys, if you'd like to tag, do you have the?
I think I
my
have it. If
professional
not, you
one?
can email it to me and I'll share it with Christy before we post the video online.
Perfect. And of course, anyone with any additional questions, or if you would like me to review a resume or something, I'm absolutely, I would be honored to do that. That's how I got to sit in front of this plant wall. No, I'm kidding. I took advantage of the services through Rutgers. And look at me now, sitting in front of a plant wall. It's fake.
No, thank you, Maureen, for your time. I really appreciate it. Especially now when everyone, like you said, we're online all the time. So I really do appreciate you taking the time out to offer us your words of wisdom.
It's a rewarding career. I mean, there's no, no looking back for the most part. It truly is a rewarding career. And I joked before, but you cannot beat the schedule in a school system. I mean, you're out by 4, and you have a summer off. Typically you're a 10-month employee. So
Right.
I mean, it's a fabulous for home and family. You can't beat that part of it.
I miss that.
Not the reason to do it, but you can't
Well,
beat
yeah,
it.
it's not the reason to do it.
No.
But it's definitely something I miss so much, not having that, having the 10-month schedule versus the 12-month year-round schedule.
And and if you're someone who likes independence, definitely, the library can give you that. A school library can give you independence. You wear all the hats. And if that's not your personality, then that's fine too. But you wear all the hats when you're a school librarian.
Well, thank you again. Thank you everyone who joined us. Please keep an eye out for our next events coming up. I don't know if Christy has anything else to add or.
Not really. I mean, I don't know that I don't think we have another one of these on the schedule for the semester, but it could happen because they're seem to be pretty valuable. And I thank you so much, Maureen, for sharing with us. But yeah, I don't have anything more. So
Great.
Thanks everybody for coming.
My pleasure.
Thanks for
Nice to meet everyone.
Thank you. Maureen, I'll reach out later. Thank
Sounds
you.
good. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Bye, James.
Bye.
Maureen, do you mind putting your oh, she left.
Oh, what?
I was just gonna ask for her email because